My buddy Mike Mayock has zoomed into the program. Good to see you, Mike Mayock. How are you, sir?
What's up, Mike?
Rich, I'm doing pretty well, and I caught the last maybe 3 minutes of your last segment.
Yes, sir.
And it always intrigues me. I sat here wondering what you were going to want to get into today, because there are a lot of ways we could go today.
Yeah, bud.
And your mind works in ways that always intrigue me.
Oh, thanks.
And you spent that last 3 minutes talking about the Darnold situation, Vikings versus Seattle. It really intrigues me that that's where you want to go. And it is an intriguing conversation. And I guess my gut is, I think a lot of times head coaches get a lot of credit. We talk about Kevin O'Connell. We talk about the two head coaches in the Super Bowl, and justifiably. But the two GMs in this Super Bowl have hit the ball out of the park. And, John Schneider number one, the quarterback situation, he moves on from Geno and got criticized for it and brought in a guy that was supposedly hitting a ceiling and has just run the table and looking like the most dominant team in the NFL, in addition to all the other moves he made. And we don't ever talk about these guys. And I know I'm partial to that, but it's a big part of this conversation that you're involved in.
Well, I mean, and again, Elliott Wolf also has crushed it in some drafts and made some great free agent moves. And then the winner and champion, obviously, is to get Vrabel there with Josh McDaniels to hook him up with Drake May, and off we go. But, in terms of the Vikings aspect of it, you know how this stuff works, Mike, and they just fired their general manager on top of it, the Friday of Senior Bowl week, which you really rarely ever see. And I just wanted to basically point out, though, is that you have to make a move when you draft somebody, right? You have to eventually hand the reins over to that guy. And the question is when. And even that was a question for Gerard Mayo last year. With Drake May, they eventually, that he's going to be the starter when somebody's drafted that high. And the same thing with J.J. McCarthy as well. I'm just wondering what you think the conversation was in Minnesota last spring when it came to Darnold, Mike.
Yeah, I think I'd love to have been a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
What I think is intriguing to me is how much of a say did the head coach have in all that?
Right.
Because he is one of the major quarterback guys in our league.
Because you would, as a general manager, want to pick his brain, obviously. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to just make this move entirely on your own, right?
I think I felt prior to the season that they weren't protected at the quarterback position. You've got a rookie a second-year player that was injured a year ago at quarterback, first-round pick.
Yes, Mike Mayock.
You don't know what you're going to get out of him. And you haven't protected yourself. You let Daniel Jones go. You let Darnold go. And the most important position in all of sports is in trouble. And that's on the GM, but also the conversation in the building with the head coach and ownership is intriguing to me. And we'll never hear that, I'm guessing.
Right.
And Kevin had to be highly involved in this whole thing because he's the quarterback guy. I mean, if I was the GM, I'd be leaning heavily on him because he's so good with quarterbacks. Like, Kev, how are we going to do this now? We got to protect ourselves. If we're going to move on from Sam, we've got to have more than a rookie coming off IR. We think we can win now. We've got a good defensive coordinator. We've won a bunch of games. It was I don't want to say criminal, but I don't know how you leave that position the way they left it at the beginning of the year.
Mike Mayock here on the Rich Eisen Show. Our radio audience just rejoined us. And again, I'm just focusing on, to start the week on the team building aspect of this. And obviously you and I will get into the X's and O's in this conversation shortly. But, you mentioned John Schneider putting this team together. It's been a journey to this point, as opposed to the immediate turnaround that the Patriots have had. What do you think is the secret sauce of the Seattle Seahawks that makes them so good, built roster-wise, going into Super Bowl 60? Mike?
Well, the bright beacon, the bright light is what we're talking about. They made the right decision at quarterback, and the Minnesota Vikings didn't.
Right.
Okay, at least for last year. So the move to Darnold was a veteran GM getting the entire organization on board. Like, this is what we're going to do, and we've got to have an infrastructure behind him to support him. And he went out, and wide receivers were signed on the fly. I mean, Cooper Kupp was a cap casualty in LA. They get Rashid Shaheed right before the trade deadline, and JSN goes off. It opens the door for him to kind of go off with a new quarterback and become the focal point. But they draft a guard in the first round. He starts the entire season. On defense, it's been a 2 or 3 year retool. I mean, their defensive backfield, 4 of the 5 starters were drafted between 22 and 5. The D lineman, I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence was a free agent last year. They traded for Leonard Williams a couple of years ago. Uchenna Nwosu a couple of years ago was a free agent. The inside linebacker, a trade for Ernest Jones. So you see a general manager who's trading, he's picking up cap casualties, he's picking up unrestricted free agents, and he's doing it in a 2 to 3 year period, both with higher paid guys and those veterans on 1 year deals, coupled with a healthy supply of draft picks. And he's turned this roster over on the fly. They've never been a bad football team. They're turning it over. They get the right quarterback and bang, they go hit it. John Schneider is one of the best GMs that you're going to talk about over the last 25 years.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and what does it take though, and to swap out your quarterback and your top wide receiver and say, this is my plan, in year 2 for your coach? Does the general manager sit there and go, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then he goes and does it, or it just happens organically, and then you look back, go, damn, I just traded my quarterback and top wide receiver away. How does that work, Mike? How does that work?
No, I mean, even though John has got say on roster and all there, and every building's a little different, who has say and how much you elicit
right
cooperation throughout your building. But John's great at that. He's a facilitator. He and Mike, I'm sure, sat down and put this whole thing together. They weren't getting production out of the quarterback position at the level they wanted. Gino was okay, but it wasn't the level. So where do we go? We're not going to get in the draft. I mean, they got to go to ownership, I'm sure, and just say, this is what we're trying to do. We're going to pay this guy $30 million, and that's kind of the mid-level in the quarterback ranks, and there's still some upside left. I mean, they all had to be on board. It wasn't John just saying, hey, Mike, good luck. Have fun this year. That is the sign of a healthy organization.
And so the signing for New England, is it Milton Williams? Which one?
Yeah.
That's it? And give me your CSIing of the Patriots roster and decision making to get them to Super Bowl 60, Mike.
Loved it. Now, you and I, before the draft, had a lot of conversations, and one of them, I remember, we talked about all the money that New England had to spend and how would they spend it.
Right.
And it was a combination of some high-powered and expensive unrestricted free agents. You mentioned Milt Williams. He was certainly one of them. I can go through their roster, Rich. I mean, I can go right down the list. They paid Spillane. They paid Carlton Davis. Morgan Moses, kind of he's an older former first round tackle, but they turned over 4 of the 5 offensive linemen, 2 rookies and 2 free agents. And then they signed a whole bunch of kind of 1 year stopgap guys that could still pay. And that's not easy, but those guys are out there. And what I think Elliott Wolf did a great job is, Mac Hollins and Stephon Diggs were both signed in March. Like, they don't have a headliner at wideout, yet they got this second-year quarterback, in the MVP conversation. Garrett Bradbury, another former first-round cap casualty. You go on the defensive side, Tonga. Kaylavon Chason, another former first-round pick. So again, my point is, they made the right decisions. They spent money intelligently on the high-level guys, and then they brought in a bunch of free agents on one-year deals that played at a high level because A, they still had something left in the tank, and B, they're playing for a new contract. And I take my tip of the cap to both of the GMs.
Super Bowl 60 comes down to what, Mike Mayock? What do you got for me?
Yeah, one thing to me, and that is the New England quarterback ready to put this team on his back and carry him? And in the playoffs thus far, it hasn't been quite as good as during the regular season. Give him credit, he's used his legs when necessary, including in the snow, a week and a half ago. But this kid has been super all year. I think Seattle's a better football team right now, and I think this kid is going to have to play the game of his life and with both his arms and his legs for New England to win.
What is Seattle cooking up for him then? What do you think Mike McDonald's doing right now on that side of the building, Mike?
I think a less talked about issue is, we talk about Jaden Daniels. We talk about Deshaun Jackson. We talk about the escapability and playmaking with the legs of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about Drake May like we should. Drake May is an athlete. And even though he's not as twitchy quick, he still can tuck it and go. And when necessary, I think their first playoff game, he had like 10 carries for close to 70 yards. And he turned the ball over, 4 or 5 times those first games, first 2 playoff games. So he's got to play completely clean. He's got to use his legs. I know Seattle is very aware of his legs. I wouldn't be surprised to see a spy, but I don't think they're scared of. I think they respect New England's receivers, but I don't think they're scared of them. So Drake May is going to have to play a game now.
And then New England, other than May, is cooking up what you think for Seattle? I mean, they are wearing, as my 14-year-old son Cooper is a diehard Patriot fan, Mike, because of his mom. Is said to me, Dad, we're wearing the same uniforms that we wore the night that Sam Darnold saw ghosts. And he's trying to dig at me too, Mike. That's what sons do. But
he might like New England because of his mom, but he certainly sounds like he's got the curiosity of his father.
So what do you think of New England's defense to try and affect Darnold to go back into the old days where he was struggling?
Yeah,
Mike.
I mean, 3 playoff games, they've allowed 26 points and they've taken the ball away 8 times.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get a whole lot better than that. I think it comes down a lot of it to what happens in the red zone, and can Sam Darnold convert the 4-point opportunities, the difference between field goals and touchdowns, versus a New England defense that's been very stingy, especially in the playoffs in the red zone. And I think you'll see some simulated pressure and some things to try and get Sam to get rid of the ball real quickly, get it out fast. But I think the red zone is as it always is. Red zone and turnovers in games like this are huge. It gets magnified. So who turns the ball over? Who's forced to kick field goals? I just think overall right now, Seattle's a more complete team from a talent perspective.
Mike Mayock here on the Rich Eisen Show. A few minutes left with the former GM of the Raiders and obviously longtime friend and colleague of mine from back in the day on NFL Network. Hey, Mike, the coaching hire that we're not talking about enough is?
Oh, the one we're not talking about. I think a team that can play well quickly with a new coach would be Atlanta with Stefanski.
Okay. Why?
Because I think he knows what he's doing. Whenever he gets a competent quarterback, he's winning 11 or 12 games, and that's where the asterisk lies, is where's Michael Penix going to come down this year, and what do you do with Kirk Cousins? They just kind of redid his contract to give him a little wiggle room, but they're probably going to have to release him. I think there's a deadline in there in March where they're going to have to release him or redo a contract. So what does the new regime think about Michael Penix? They got Matt Ryan. They've got Kevin Stefanski. That's a Philly connection, those 2 guys. And Ian Cunningham, the new GM. I think that's a team ready to win quickly. But it's all going to be on Michael Penix, and I think Kevin Stefanski went a long way. He won Coach of the Year twice when he had a quarterback he could work with.
We had Jeff Hafley on the show, and I'll bring it up because I see your hat there, your BC football hat. I loved meeting him. I'd never spoken to him before. He was like emotionally intelligent, and I couldn't have been more impressed. And obviously, you want to talk about what do you think of the quarterback with a new regime? I think he's at the top of the list, right? I mean, obviously, Mike LaFleur with Kyler Murray now in Arizona, jumps out at you about what about the quarterback. No doubt, though, Hafley's got an interesting situation there in Miami. Mike?
Yeah, and the Tua thing's hard, Rich, because on top of just evaluating talent, you're scared to death about concussions and injuries. It adds another layer to that whole conversation with where are you on your quarterback? And I'm sure that was a question Haf had to answer in his interview. Is where do you stand on this guy? And you better have a plan, because if you're going to move on from this guy, not only is there a big salary cap, but you better have an answer. It was kind of like when I had the Raiders and we had Derek Carr, and people wanted to move on from Derek, and John and I would look at each other like, yeah, but what's next? Where are we going? Where are we finding that guy? It's going to be interesting to see how they go after trying to. The hard thing, I think, is he's quick. He can move in the pocket, but he got rid of the ball so quickly last year. It was almost like he was worried about getting hurt. So what's the fine line where you let this kid play like an athlete, you let this kid play at a high level, but you also try to take care of him? And I think that's a really difficult question, because if Haf doesn't answer that the right way, then it's going to be a tough year until they find the answer.
And then speaking of BC, a kid out of BC once upon a time strolled into the Giants locker room, right? I'm looking at him, right? Am I not mistaken? Or you were Steeler first, Mike?
I was a Steeler first.
You were Steeler first. Okay, then you stroll into the Giants locker room, and all I could think of what your career could have been like if your special teams coordinator was actually a Hall of Famer, Mike. What would your career have been like?
I'm guessing that guy is just going to be delayed 1 year. And
what do you think of the whole Belichick thing, Mike?
I'm blown away by the fact that whether it's petty jealousies, which I hope it isn't with the voters, because I've found the voters over the years to really care about what they're doing. Whether it's the new system they instituted this year with how they're voting, which I think is stupid. Like, you got 3 senior guys, all of whom you can make a great argument for. You got an owner and you got a coach. And I don't know how you compare and contrast 3 different layers in this NFL bubble. Like, let's pick a coach, let's pick a senior, let's pick an owner, but let's not pick them against each other. And, I read the article about from the one voter who said, hey, I thought it was important to try and get the seniors in their last year, and I know Belichick's going to get in. Okay, I get it, but if you're doing your job, in my opinion, who's the most deserving of that 5? And the answer has got to be Belichick from everybody. So I just don't get it.
What do you tell you?
Why are you laughing?
Because you're right. That's why I'm laughing. You know what I mean? Like, we were talking about it last week, Mike. Like, any single time you just start talking about his resume and why he should be a Hall of Famer, you just start laughing, saying, why am I even wasting my breath? We all know, right? I mean, what did he tell you when you first walked in the Giants locker room? Do you remember your first interaction with Belichick, Mike?
I remember one of my first ones was getting in a fight on a punt in practice. And I wasn't necessarily trying to get in a fight, but nobody knew me and I needed to do something. I was being overly aggressive.
Like the first day of prison.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. All right.
And in the morning practice, I got in a fight. And thankfully, in those, nobody ever gets hurt. You're throwing shots, and the guy could have killed me had it gone any further. But it got broken up, and we were stretching for the afternoon practice. And Belichick, who at that point was probably all of, if I was 23, what was he, 29, maybe 30?
Yeah.
We're stretching. He looks at me. He comes over. He goes, "Hey, tough guy. We're going to find out whether or not you can really play or not this afternoon. So you better buckle it up." And to my astonishment, all of a sudden, I was on a different. I think I was on the first punt team, and it opened the door to give me a chance to compete because it also got me some extra safety reps. And I got in some games, and back we had 4 preseason games, and so him kind of taking a liking to me as a backup safety and special teams player opened the door to give me a chance to make a team.
And Parcells, was he there yet? Was Bill there yet?
Parcells? Oh yeah,
Parcells was there.
In the '82 strike, yeah. Ray Perkins went back to Alabama.
That's right. Okay.
Parcells got elevated to head coach on an interim basis, as did Belichick go from special teams to defensive coordinator on an interim, and both those were made permanent starting in '83, I believe.
Okay, so the guy you fought wasn't Lawrence Taylor then?
I had a side deal with him.
Which is why you're a healthy man talking to me today, Mike. Love our chats. Obviously, look for more of my texts and calls to you over the next coming weeks and months as we build more rosters. Thanks, Mike. You're the man.
Appreciate you. Thanks,
so,
Rich.
I'm remiss. So who wins Super Bowl 60? What's your prediction?
I think Seattle's a better football team, so I think they win the game. I think they're both really well coached, but I think Seattle wins.
Mike, you're the man. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, brother.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Mayock here on The Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.